A significant emergency happened last night with the Willow librarian. They were called out of state, unfortunately, on a family emergency, and that's why I have their written comments there. I will be reading her written comments to the board, and the board, per the outline, has the opportunity to extend this to a second meeting if they have specific questions for that librarian. If they don't, then we'll follow the format that's in front of you there. If you want to take a second and grab copies of that and my business card so you can follow along, that's fine. And if you want, at the end of the meeting, I'll stick around and get your contact information if you'd like an emailed copy to you. We're going to do quick introductions. If we can start on our right, please be sure to turn your microphone on and then shut it off.
I'm Geraldine Dinkelwalter. I'm the librarian at Upkeep Library.
Cassie Drake, I'm the librarian for Big Lake.
Okay. I'm Alicia Jones, the recreational administrative assistant.
I'm Jenny Robson. I represent Travel Creek Library. I'm Kathy Kaiser and I represent the Sutton Library.
Okay, thank you everyone for signing in. One of the things, if you're new to this process, there is no public comment from anybody except the library committee, as well as the patron, and I'll be acting as the Willow librarian. I'll be happy, as I said, to stick around after the meeting and answer any questions from the public. We are following the community development's collection development policy. There's a copy of that can be found online in several places, but essentially it allows patrons, people to object to materials that the borough has in its library. We're going to do two books today. We're going to do Red Hook first, and then we're going to do Identical. Both of those books were objected to by the same person, and I see that person in the audience here as well. Part of the process is for them to sit down with the librarian where the book is located. It's my understanding that that meeting did happen on October 11th. And it was the librarian's opinion that the two books should remain in the young adult section. There were originally 4 books challenged, but the patron requested that we only talk about these 2. That was the initial information we had from the librarian. And then what happens is a committee is formed by volunteers of the library board and volunteers of 2 of the borough libraries. They then read those books, and then we host this meeting to allow the patron and the committee to discuss the 2 books in question. By following this format, we're going to have the patron come up and speak about the book Red Hood first, because I want to do one, get it out of the way, one way or the other, and then do the second one, get it out of the way, rather than have conversations about two books at the same time. I think that keeps things clearer and allows for a better process. I do want to mention that this meeting is being recorded and it will be available for view on the borough website at a future date. That's up to our IT department. I don't have the ability to put things on the internet, but as soon as the meeting is over, our staff person will get that up and on the borough webpage as expeditiously as possible. So to start the meeting format, I'd like to invite Jackie Goforth to come to the microphone and present her objection to the book Red Hood. Oh.
Good morning, my name is Jackie Goforth. I am here to speak about the book Red Hood. Back in 1972, a man named Miller put out unsolicited advertisement for his adult store. And what he found out was the California court, the California charged him with an obscene violation, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in a majority opinion written by Chief Justice Warren Berger, the court held that obscene materials enjoy no special protection
Ma'am,
under the First Amendment.
ma'am, please sit down. Thank you. We do not want the meeting objected. Thank you.
Now, the Miller test was determined. Oh, the U.S. obscenity is not protected under First Amendment rights to free speech, and violations of federal immunity law or federal obscenity laws are criminal offenses. The Miller test may include, for example, visual depictions, spoken words, or written text. Now, on the Miller test, it's defined as, is the person over 18 and are they distributing to the person under 16? The answer to that is yes. Is there sexual penetration happening? I am going to refer now to Kathy Kaiser's review of it, done on December 25th, while she was not supposed to be discussing this. It includes 2 or 3 sex scenes. So yes, there is sexual penetration. Now, is there masturbation? Absolutely yes. The third part, however, is harm to child. Harm to children has 3 parts to it. It's predicated on a couple of things. One is the term as a whole for a person under 16. If the movie The Sound of Music had had a Von Trapp family taking off their clothing and having an orgy, the whole thing would have been obscene for persons under 16. The other thing is about community standards. Now, community standards involves 3 things. They are prurient interest. Does it have serious value? And is it offensive? For prurient interest, I would like to offer the prurient interest. I would like to offer 2 things, 2 quotes. At last, he's found his way there, a hand on each of your thighs, his head buried between them, and he's not teasing you, not now. And the next one, which is on my poster. You wonder one Saturday afternoon, your chin rubbed red from his weekend stumble, your vulva swollen with his water. This is an example of prurient interest. Now, when it comes to serious literary value, I'm going to use community member Sarah Ruth Welton, PhD's works. She's a professional counselor out of Wasilla who sat in judgment of the book challenge in Wasilla. And her words are exactly from a deleted post. Go ahead. It isn't a very good book literarily. It's called Red Hood. That is a community member who happens to be a PhD in Wasilla. Now, when it comes to offensive, on November 28, I'm now going to quote library board member Susan Powder. Susan Powder, on November 28, said the following. Some people are weird, they're hate-filled, they gotta hate and demonize others. But what she also said was, some people who support the First Amendment, even if they don't like the book. The problem is she was never asked if she liked the book or didn't like the book. She was asked if it was offensive. For 3 different situations in 3 different crowds, I have asked if people find this offensive, and the answer is 96% yes. And Susan Powder was also a yes. She finds it offensive. And offensive is a criteria in the Miller-Ginsburg test. Now, I'm going to quote Kaiser Review now. We have a Kathy Kaiser review. She also reviews Red Hood, and her review says, I found the descriptive scenes of menstruation and violence a little off-putting. And she also said, when I talk about male toxic masculinity, she portraying the male characters as animals who lack self-control. These are exactly the reasons why Red Hood is obscene and is not acceptable to be given to children under 16. Now, I'd like to also tell you that you're going to hear from a librarian now, and the librarian is going to talk about how these books are selected and how they use publishers' words and reviews and things like that. Now, I want you to know that reviews can be purchased. I'm a writer, I know that, I bought reviews. I also want you to know that publishers is just a sales pitch. And don't just believe me, please believe Melody Wright. She's a middle school teacher who happens to be on the school board library meeting. And what did she say? She says that a publisher's back blurb is just a hook to hook a reader. It's just a sales pitch, and that's exactly what it is. This book has several reviews. They all from people who also agree with me and the rest of the community And the Miller-Ginsburg test is set up on community standards. It is not set up on what people think or their opinions. It's set up on community standards where the material resides. Thank you.
You,
Oh, one more thing, excuse me, one more. It has been said that I do not read the book. Yes, I do. At the time I turned it in, I had only read part of it, but I own it and I have read it cover to cover. And that is a misnomer to put online that it has not been read. I have read Red Hood. Thank you.
thank you for your comments. Just 1 second, please. Again, I want to stress that, the Willow librarian was called out of town and a significant family emergency, and I am reading her comments as part of the outline as it pertains to Red Hood only. And then, the board will begin its discussion, and they can ask questions of the patrons. They can't ask questions of the librarian because obviously she is not here. Per the information I received from Julie Mitchell, who's on the librarian last night, Red Hood was added to our collection, meaning Willow, in June of 2020. It was part of our selection. I'm sorry? Oh, I apologize. Okay. All right, I'll start over. The comments I'm reading are from our Willow librarian, Julie Mitchell. She was called out of town unexpectedly last night. For a family emergency, out of state on a family emergency last night. I asked her to put her comments in writing and that I would read them on her part. Red Hood was added to our collection in June of 2020. It's part of our selection from the Junior Library Guild subscription. JLG, which is shortened to the Junior Library Guild. Titles are curated by our renowned editorial team who read and review thousands of manuscript submissions each year prior to publication. To choose the best award-worthy books for our members, with nearly 95% of our selections going on to win awards, honors, starred reviews, and industry accolades, you can trust JLG to bring top quality books to your library that will engage and appeal to your readers. Arnold, who is the last name of the author, is a quote from Publishers Weekly. Arnold artfully spins a dark, magic-hinged Little Red Riding Hood retelling in which a young woman discovers the power that is her birthright. At once a sharp critique of male entitlement and celebration of sisterhood and feminine power. This story will linger with readers long after the final page. This next review is from Booklist. In the wake of her Prince Honor winning damsel, Arnold blazes a new and equally powerful trail through toxic masculinity. Read, shed your pelt, and be transformed, for blades are being sharpened. Next is a quote from School Library Journal. A fantastic novel in the Me Too era, empowering women to share their stories by reaching out, speaking up, and demanding a change. Next one is a quote from Kirkus Reviews. Arnold uses an intriguing blend of magic realism, lyrical prose, and imagery that evokes intimate physical and emotional aspects of young womanhood. A timely and unabashedly feminist twist on a classic fairy tale. Publishers Weekly had this book as the best young books of 2020. As of 1/17/24, that was yesterday at noon on Amazon, Red Hood had 90% of its reviews being 3-star or better. This book was added and retained in accordance with the collection development policy. And that's the end of her statement. And I believe that was under 5 minutes. So what happens now is the committee considers both presentations and then they can ask questions again of the patron or amongst themselves. They will either make a recommendation on the disposition of the book at the meeting or decide not to make a recommendation at the meeting and schedule a second meeting in order to consider the information and presentations. And we're going to do that first part or that first sentence now. So I will turn the microphones over to the committee members.
Who do you want to start?
If anybody can.
Should go down the line. Gary should start.
Be sure and press your mics. Turn.
Okay, so this book is not usually my genre for reading. I tend to read historical novels and mysteries. And I don't read books about children who have been kidnapped or abused, meaning adults, children, elderly. So the first 10 pages were pretty shocking to me. If I had not had to read it, I probably wouldn't have finished it. And I did feel that the editor did not do its job in trying to persuade the author to say, do you think you could come up with something, a different reason for this child to run off into the woods? I did finish reading it. I tried to read it as a story without trying to make judgments every page or every 10th page, which was, it was a different way of reading for me, besides being a different genre. And then I revisited the sections that were probably the most objectionable to the people who are sitting here. No, I don't think that it actually passes all the requirements for it to be obscene. But, and I do agree with Julie's comments that the book did go through the proper channels to be vetted. I just feel like maybe this is not where it should be. That, yes, the novel did stick with me for quite a while. And I have been spending the last 3 weeks really reviewing what I thought. And I think that the objections to it being in a young adult section are correct. Okay.
All right, yeah, so, I didn't think I was going to like this book. I have read other things by this author that I definitely didn't enjoy. It is a little bit closer to what I usually read. I tend to read fantasy, and so this definitely fits that. I agree with Jerry that it definitely stuck with me, but I think it stuck with me for different reasons. If this had been something that I had read as a teenager, as a 16-year-old, I think it would have felt empowering. And I think for me, a big part of what it was about was female relationships and the strength in those relationships. And that's what stuck with me, that I had a lot of relationships with my friends and with the women who helped my parents raise me, and the book to me had echoes of that, and that meant a lot to me. So for me, it was a lot about empowerment versus the sexual content of it. There were moments where I thought, I don't know if this needs to be in the book. It's definitely, or we're writing something, it's definitely not something I would have written. But to me, that wasn't what it was about. It was about it, coming into your own and a coming of age story. And for me, that means that it does stay in young adult.
Cassie, a question for both librarians. What is the age range for the young adult section in the library?
I've always been told through my schooling and through publishers that it's 14 to 21.
That's not correct.
Okay.
That's not correct. That's not correct. I'm a writer. And the young adult section is 14 to 17.
Thank you for your clarification. I appreciate it.
My experience with kids, of this age. I worked at Sioux Valley High for 25 years. That's age or grade 7 through 12. I heard a lot of stories from those kids. I wasn't a teacher. I was secretary substitute every classified person in the building. They came to me with a lot of stories of what they had done, where they had been, what they were going to do, that I tried to counsel away from, some of it, but I had no control. This book is not out of line. They're totally into this sort of thing, all of them, that age group. The only thing I didn't like about this book is the first chapter. It could have been in the middle of the book or the end. But the kids of that young age are totally aware of everything that's in this book. They're doing it or they're talking about it. Where's the adult?
May I comment, please?
Yes, then we'll get back on the format.
At the school district meeting, they're always talking about setting expectations. Students rise to your expectations. So if students are doing something or kids are doing something in a certain age range, do you give them a book that shows them how and validates it for them? No, you don't. All that does is make it so it's okay. It normalizes it. Thank you.
Let me interject very quickly. I don't disagree with your statement. However, as has been mentioned many times, parents sign off on the youth library card at both the borough and city libraries. And ultimately, it's the parents' responsibility to monitor what their kids read. And we do not have we don't have an age restriction on where you can go in the library. Ultimately, it boils down to the parents monitoring what their children read, accepting responsibility for what they read. And the last thing I think any of us would like the government to do is determine what our children have access to. I think that is the responsibility of the parents.
It's the responsibility of the parents, but they expect some kind of guidance from the library. The library is not to put in seats about swollen vulvas in the books for children if their parents expect them to read at a different level. This book does not say it's explicit on it. What parent would know that part is in there?
I'm not going to debate what a parent does or doesn't know, but I'm going to say it's the parent's responsibility to look through these books or to look up the reviews of these books before they allow them.
But the parents are not violating the law. The librarian is.
Well, that is certainly your opinion and one that has not been proven in any court of law. And with that, we'll get back on track. Thank you.
It's pedophiles. Former jail nurse.
Say, we are going to end this meeting. We are going to end this meeting if we do not control the outbursts.
May I finish my comments?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I acted as their school parent. I counseled them on what was right and what was wrong. I had no control over what they did. They all still call me their school mother. So I was not allowing them or condoning what they did. I was acting as a mother. And they knew that.
Libraries. Really? That's right.
So what's in the library is nothing new to any of those kids. They're totally aware of it.
But you can't.
You
Again,
don't need, I'm not gonna argue with any of it. I'm just telling you what I know. So what's in the library, yes, can be monitored, but the kids are way ahead of what's there. And the parents are the ones that need to keep up with them. We have no control over them.
Show the book. Very much. Follow the rules. Let it be your whole on.
as I mentioned, I'll be happy to stay after the meeting and talk with any of you that want to speak about this. But let's try and stick to the format because Ms. Goforth has 2 books that we're going to review today.
Thank you for listening.
Going by the reason for the objection here, was actually 4 different things. One was that there were obscene sexual activities, and our legal definition of obscene is not met because obscene means it's going to appeal to the prurient interest. That means it encourages excessive interest in sex, and it does not in any way present itself as encouraging sex. To assume that teens aren't going to have sex if they don't have a book to read about it is a very misinformed position. The other things that were objected to were the toxic masculinity agenda, violence, and profanity, none of which fall under the obscene category or even in the Miller-Ginsburg test. Those aren't reasonable objections. Those are opinions that it's toxic masculinity. And the Miller-Ginsburg test means that, or says that a person commits the crime of distribution if they knew what was in the book and the book met the legal definition of obscenity. That person who distributes needs to know that the material depicts actual physical things like toxic, like sexual penetration or bestiality or masturbation. Librarians don't read every book they put on the shelf. So there's no way that they can be held responsible for distribution of indecent material. And I think the bottom basic line is that this doesn't meet the legal definition of obscenity. Is it my favorite book? No. I just don't read things about vampires and werewolves, and that's just not my genre. So, however, I do think that it's rightly placed in the library, and that if a parent has an objection to it, then they should not allow their child to check it out.
All right, so circling back, does anybody else on the committee have any comments? Do any of you want to move this to a second meeting so that the Willow Librarian has an opportunity to be questioned? Okay,
I
here.
don't think that's necessary.
All right, so what I gathered, correct me if I'm wrong, committee, was that one of the librarians felt that it should be moved to the adult section. However, the other 3 members agreed that it should stay where it currently is. Okay. Was that what the genesis of the, okay.
Yeah.
So, we kind of go by simple majority here, in that we have 3 folks requesting that it stay in the young adult section and 1 objecting to it. So what happens next is that essentially if the patron does not agree with the recommendation of the committee, they can request an appeal of the decision to the community development director within 10 days. I will provide them with a determination of the committee's recommendation. And then the community development director will, upon receipt of the request by the patron, examine all the information, and I'll write up my notes here from the meeting. They can also review the tape, and then they will respond to the patron's request. That being said, I want to move on to the second book, which is called Identical. If I could invite Ms. Goforth back to the microphone, and we'll set the timer again. The patron has 5 minutes to talk about the book. The book is called, the next book is called Identical.
My name is Jackie Goforth, and I am for sure going to send these on to Eric Phillips, because you have a member up on that board that is extremely biased. They are part of the Alaska Library Association, American Library Association, which is a group of people fighting parents and people who are doing these. She also did reviews on these books during the area of time that they were not allowed to have a discussion. And everybody knows that putting an opinion out is the start of a discussion. So I will definitely be putting these out for proceeding purposes. But but let's talk about Identical.
We'll start your recording.
Let me just clarify.
No, let's not clarify.
But let's not get into a discussion, Kathy.
I didn't know that any of the people on the committee before I got here today.
So let's restart the timer for Ms. Goforth, please.
Second.
Thank you for that,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
If evil had a face and a name, it would be this book, Identical. Identical, if you know anything about subliminal messaging, Identical has sex, and sexual acts listed 61 times. 61 times. 61 times people reading this are going to see the word sex or read a sex act. Child porn and incest is in there 24 times. 24 times. 24 times it's put in your face. Alcohol and drug abuse is in there 103 times. And all of this is not just in there as documentary purposes. It's glamorized and glorified. Do you understand this? This is a child molester's dream. And self-harm is in here 46 times. 46 times this book goes over this.
Demonic.
I need my list because I've lost it. I'm going to have to just, okay, ready? This book has a review on it. Let me find it. How's that this? Huh? How can I lose my papers? I don't have that many. This book has a review on it. This book has a review on it that says, one of the twins is being molested by the father while the other one is jealous of her. Do you know what a child molester would think about that? They want it. She's jealous because she wants daddy's attention. Do you know this person in this book likes cutting herself and tells you how wonderful it is to see the blood coming out? The person in this book tells you how it feels to vomit. She tells you how wonderful it feels to purge your body. How many times? Self-harm 46 times in this book. Puke, 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 cutting, 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 bleeding, bleeding, bleeding. Do you know that it's got masochism in it? Do you know she does sex for drugs? Do you know she mixes oxycodone and she gets her dad all drunk on oxycodone so he won't attack the other twin? And if he does attack the other twin, she's jealous. They do a little thing called lollipop. They do a little thing where daddy comes in and gives oral sex to the daughter. And then when the dad comes in and rapes the daughter, the one watching doesn't even comfort her. This is the most disgusting thing I have ever seen in my life. It hurt my soul. That's how many places that I could read you something from. So let me read you something from this. Shall we? Just stay like that for daddy. I want to teach you something new. He lifted her nightgown, rolled it over her belly, coaxed her thoroughbred legs apart. She squirmed a paltry protest. Don't move. Daddy's scarlet face underlined his command. But as quickly as its anger flared, it dissipated. It was only his mouth that night. He didn't even ask her to touch him, proving his love for her. I can't exactly remember why, only we didn't expect Mom late. So here comes Dad. Daddy burst through the door. I closed my eyes tight. I made myself no more than a shadow. I cracked my eyes a slit as he sat on Kennedy's bed and pulled her into his lap. I love you so much, my little flower. Daddy needs something from my girl, my sweet rose. Will you give it to me? I wanted to be his little flower. I would have given my daddy anything. What does he want from Kennedy and why isn't it me? Didn't you know that at the end of this book, there's not even a closure? This woman still vomits occasionally, she still cuts herself occasionally, and Daddy doesn't even get charged with anything. He moves. Do you know why the premises? Because Mom's in Congress. And when she finally tells her mother that it hurts when she's washing her in the shower, and her mother goes, where? She says, where Daddy touches me. And Mother gets a stone face and walks out. This is the most heinous, perverted book to give to any child under the age of 16. And I have news for you. They're young teens. 14, 15, and 16 are young teens. And in the medical community, it goes to 18. 18 is a child. But to give a 14-year-old this information is disgusting. To give it to a pervert is even more disgusting. They like to think that their victims want it. Do you have any idea what kind of horror this book is? If evil has a face, people, it is the book Identical. And that's what one of the pages looks like. If you want to talk about literary, that's what one of the pages looks like. The words are all scattered through it. This is not of any value to absolutely anyone. In fact, I own the book. I've read it, as you can tell, every single word. And I went through it backwards to find the ones because it traumatized me, and I'm 65, and I used to read these as a judge for the romance industry's top award for adults. This shouldn't even be an adult fiction, it's that sick. Thank you.
Look how pretty it is. Look how pretty that book is.
All right, thank you for your comments. I do appreciate it. I'm reading the comments back again, that Julie Mitchell, from Willow, wrote up yesterday. Identical was added to the collection, in September of 2008. Hopkins has stated, Hopkins is the, I apologize. I said I'm reading the comments from Royal Library. Identical was added to our collection in September of 2008. Hopkins has stated that Hopkins is the author. I chose this subject matter because the issue touched the lives of 3 of my friends. Today they are successful, beautiful women who you would have never believed this might have happened to. I want readers to know it is possible to find a way beyond this terrible place into a brighter future. Hopkins, this is a review by the Kirkus Reviews. Hopkins' gift with free verse reaches new heights in his portrait of slender identical twins. Kaylee and Rayanne maintain distinct voices throughout as they wrestle with psychic damage and an astonishing, devastating realization. Sharp and stunning, brief, final page. This is from Publishers Weekly. Hopkins' verse is not only lean and sinuous, it also demonstrates a mastery of technique. As of 1/17/24, that was yesterday at noon, Amazon's Identical review had 95% of its reviews being 3 stars or better. The book was added and retained in accordance with the collective development policy. Those are the librarian's comments. And again, like I said on the first review, the committee is unable to ask the librarian any questions at this time. They may have a discussion amongst themselves now. They may ask questions of Ms. Goforth, and they may make a recommendation, or they may put off recommendation until they have an opportunity to meet with the other library, which will also be a public meeting, should they decide to do so. And with that, I'll turn the microphones over to the committee members.
I'd like to start this one. It's controversial. This is a controversial young adult book. I understand that. It definitely pushes boundaries that might leave you horrified. But the truth is that reality can be really horrifying. And it can make you uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean that it should be remain hidden, and there should be topics we don't talk about or read about. I wish that there had been books like this when I was a teenager.
As an adult.
Books that talked about what was kept hush hush. Books that showed unhealthy ways to deal with severe dysfunction. They did not glamorize it. They let you know this was an unhealthy way to deal with it. And books that showed that healing was possible. Books that showed that I would not be in physical danger if I told my secrets to a professional. I mean, it speaks to me, and I think it encourages young people to reach out to a responsible adult. And it just goes against everything when I hear Jackie read the sections of this book with a sexy voice. When it is a child who is scared and being. The child is not turned on as she can lead you to believe with her sexy voice. In addition, this book's been on the shelves for 16 years, but because it showed up on some list online as a potentially banned book, all of a sudden here we are discussing it. Again, it's been on the shelf for 16 years.
We didn't know.
Without objection.
We didn't know. We know now.
So I think we're looking at what's
They can call it that.
legally, again, it doesn't meet the definition of obscenity. It does not encourage young people to go out and have sex. It doesn't encourage incest. It doesn't encourage cutting. It doesn't encourage drug use. It talks about all of those things in a way that's very cautionary
Yes.
and to let you know what could happen. So, I just believe the book has value where it is.
And I totally agree with Kathy. They, having dealt with kids that suffered abuse at home. Because what is it? 8 out of 10 girls suffer for some kind of abuse from a male in their world.
So it's okay and teach them that.
It's okay to give them a comparison book to read, to realize that it's not right and they're not the only one in the world suffering from this. And that they can go to adults, people in charge.
What about the kids who don't have that problem?
They learn that
Okay, it's not an exchange, folks. This is,
they learn that it exists and maybe explains what's wrong with some of their friends.
Oh,
I'm glad you worked in a school, so you know that.
oh,
I agree with Kathy again.
I worked in government.
We know obscenity when we hear it and see it.
Yeah, we all do. That's right.
Yeah, they need that, baby.
I actually have something to say that I would like to say without this meeting being adjourned, because you're.
Why? Because you're bad, pathetic.
All right, all right.
Like, we
It's our guarantee. All right.
ladies and gentlemen, we've asked you repeatedly to contain the outbursts, and I'll be happy to talk with you after the meeting. I'd like the committee to be able to discuss this without the interruptions if that's possible. Thank you. And please remember, committee members, to hit your mic.
Sorry, I thought my voice was loud enough.
No.
Is it a record?
You said something now?
Talking.
You say that we don't know what's going on. You're wrong, because I do. I do know what goes on to a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old girl.
Okay.
And it is, if you think you're passionate about this, about getting information out to children who can say, I am not alone here. There is something that I can do, or someone that I can speak to.
So why isn't it set aside just for those children and not for every child to walk it through and pick it up?
Because they have
Okay,
friends.
this is not a
Excuse me,
debate.
she's questioning me.
Are you questioning her or?
No.
You're making a
I'm
statement?
not questioning you.
No, yeah.
I'm sorry if I said it wrong.
So I would,
Excuse me?
no,
I won't stand on that. You can't debate. None of us.
Okay, I just misunderstood you.
if we could,
Because this is all set up.
I know it's not a dialogue.
if we could,
It's a monologue.
if we could
So-
focus our comments on the review of the book and where it is placed.
Yes.
So do accept our comments or just your comments?
You said let's focus on the comments.
Come on. Come on, guys. We gotta play by, there's.
It's an assembly person.
Our comments, does that mean we get to comment?
No, there's no public comment during this meeting.
Take the hour out of it.
As I said at the start of the meeting and two other times, I'll be happy to discuss the book or this committee after the meeting with you. The way the policy and the way the review committee works is it's a conversation between the patron, the librarian, and the committee. If you would like, I could provide you with a copy of the collection development policy. Okay, thank you.
This book really affected me because I could have used it when I was a young kid. I also had a sister that protected me, but I don't know how she really felt about it. Did she really feel that by sleeping in front of our bedroom door, she was protecting me? I don't know. And I never asked her because like the character in the book that we just reviewed, I did not forget to forget. I let it kind of just get out of my mind. This book kind of brought it all back. It was very traumatic to me. But if I had had something like this when I was growing up, it would have made me feel like I was not alone. That it was there were other people going through this, and that there were people that you could talk to. I guess that's all I have to say. I think it's a valuable book for children, especially girls who are going through this particular phase in their lives. I don't consider it child grooming. The dad was doing that. He was using everything in his power to try to get control of this girl. I think belongs in our library, in the young adult section. It'd be nice if it was in the adult section, so maybe the mothers or the fathers whose child is being abused.
Put it there.
Yeah.
It could be in both.
It could be in both.
Oh, yeah, it is in both.
That's it.
I don't get it.
Okay, this is a very hard one for me to read. I tried several times reading this. I didn't have a protect issue growing up, but I had other ones going on. So this one hit home in a very real way. I apologize, and like I said, it's not something that I enjoyed reading. It broke my heart to read it. Thank you. That being said, kids need real world examples because they are going through this stuff. I hate that they're going through this, I really do. But knowing that they have a chance to see if they're not the only one that it's happening to, that means a lot. You're not alone. And this book shows that. We don't want these things to be happening, but they happen. Yeah, so I thought, this was some extremely difficult topics, but in my opinion, they were dealt with respectfully and in a way that is approachable to a teenager. I had friends who did deal with exactly this, and I didn't know what was happening to them. They didn't know what was happening to me. We talked about it when we were older, but we didn't know that it was okay to tell somebody that it was happening. And to me, this book helps show that you're gonna be, maybe you're not gonna be believed, but you can tell somebody. Yeah, so for me, this one needs to say in young adult. It's not one, it came out when I was in high school. I remember seeing it on the shelf in my home library. I didn't read it at the time because even then, realistic fiction is not my genre. But I read others that were similar to it. And we've talked about kids are gonna do these things regardless of if it's in a book. I didn't read this one as a kid, but I read other ones that were similar. And I can confidently tell you, I didn't automatically go out and do what was talked about in the book.
Excuse me, I can already see how the vote's going. And I want to tell you right now that if this book is so important for children to see and know that someone is like them, then why isn't it in nonfiction self-help? This is not something you give to your average 14 or 15-year-old to just look upon and find out that daddies do this to their daughters and the other person likes it, that they're sexist. Didn't you see that? Sex is in there 61 times the word. Do you know how subliminal messaging works? I don't care if you call off this hearing. It's going to be 4 people putting this to young children. That is child porn. If it was in a movie, the FBI would be in here. That's child porn, what that man does to his daughter. And what she does when she cuts herself, that is glorifying it. And what she does to get her joint and to get her next fix, that's glorifying sex. And the sadomasochism in there. She takes people tying her up and doing stuff to her and vampire stuff to her so she can get her joint. This book is the sickest thing I've ever seen. And if that's what you want children to read, that says a lot about people who are on the library board and in the library. This should only go, if you think it's that important that people need to see themselves in this book, then it needs to go in a nonfiction self-help area.
Right.
This book is toxic. It's evil. 63 times that book says sex. If you saw sex on a highway 63 times, it's in your head. It's called subliminal messaging. My minor was in commercial arts. If you see cutting and purging and pinching and all that many times, it's in your head, even if you never thought about it. What is wrong with you people?
Okay, we're not.
Seriously, I don't care if you call a hearing, sir. Anybody else want the mic? In fact, Mike,
We're not going to.
I can't be.
Personal.
You guys are made to. I got the mic. He's on a live feed, sir. He's on a live feed.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments.
Dave, come on up here. This is Assembly Person Dee McKee. You can call your hearing. I already know what your vote is. And I already know I'm gonna turn it in because she is on this committee
Let's
and she.
stop the personal attacks. There is a collection development policy.
You
We've
made
discussed
me
it.
read these books.
I didn't make anyone read them.
Yes, you did.
Thank you
In
for
order
your
to
comments.
complain about them, your thing.
As I understand the committee's decisions,
Dee?
the vote will remain in young adult and the meeting is closed. Thank you for all comments. I would
Like
be
this, we
happy to
listen to them.
discuss this with you.
No,
Where you're sitting right there, right now.
As an assembly person, we listen and people show up because we are your boss.
So you can just sit there and listen to us. You don't have to say a damn word, but we're gonna say it. Yeah.
I'll come down there and talk to you.
Still going?
Dee, go for it.
I'm an assembly person, I'm also a.
Sit down and take.
I am also a 26-year teacher.
You're out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order.
No.
You're out of order.
They closed this meeting.
You're
Now
out of
we're in
order.
Yeah, we're not.
You're out of order.
No,
You're out
no,
of order.
Let me talk to something that matters.
You're out of order.
I am 26-year middle school teacher and one of the.
And that was
4 years
unfortunate.
that I taught college was to inform kids of the age we're talking about here in a respectful. Now, this is not meant to go to the kid who needs it, whose parent is abusing them, because as a lady said, she didn't read it. But what this does is it takes a kid who looks at this and they get sexually excited. If you don't think they do, then you weren't 14 at one time. So when you put this crap in the library and put this filth and poison into kids' mouths, first of all, I had another adult an adult tell me that this was kind of titillating.
And when you're looking at this, if you're a kid, you have nothing to balance it against. It's like, okay, let me try this. The other thing it does, daddies are wonderful people. This also plants in the mind of the kid whose dad would probably never consider it. You gotta get it, maybe daddy could do this. I think this is horrible. I don't understand who these librarian people are. I think it's disgusting. And I'll say it one more time. We are their boss. We showed up here to tell them we don't want them to do this, and they decided they get to make the decision that they're the only ones that count. And I am sorry, this is disgusting, and if there's any way that I can be on a committee or form something where we can actually have a voice, bring it, because I'm there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a retired paramedic, 22 years in the field. I have seen child abuse. I have seen sexual child abuse. And I've seen it up close and personal. And it's horrifying. It's beyond horrifying. It is even more beyond horrifying when bodies like this, including our social services, turn their child, a 3-year-old, who's been fed Quaaludes by his mother, quote unquote, because it's more important that that child is back to the mother, even though that mother is killing that kid. That's the society and that goes back to 1980s when I saw that. I have seen child abuse and possible sexual abuse when I've got a 10-year-old that is kneeling in the dad's bedroom and kneeling back and forth, rocking back and forth. And it was so obvious what was going on. That's what this book does.
Encourages.
It normalizes it. You take Red Riding Hood, it's the same damn thing. Now, if that one lady up here that says she was mom to her kids, I wouldn't want that mom within 1,000,000 miles of my kid. And I don't even have kids.
Right.
Since the rules are that we people cannot speak, well, by God, I am part of we people, and by God, I'm speaking, and I am going to do everything I can to the Attorney General to hold these people in lawfully, wrongfully, criminally liable. And I want to see this kind of garbage and these kind of people that are running these libraries taken to court and charged and filed and convicted and thrown in jail.
Right.
Under the RICO law. For that, I want you to know that the library board meets once a month. And they canceled the meeting in January, but the next one is February 13th. It is at 1:00 in the afternoon at the Talkeetna Library. And I didn't know there was an audience participation section in it. There is, so you can go and you can speak to the board, February 13th, Talkeetna, and you can tell them as a community what you think about the books.
What time?
At 1:00 at the Talkeetna Library. Yeah, anybody else?
Mike Alexander. I was a jail nurse for the last 3.5 years. I've seen all kinds of perverts, whether I wanted to or not. Anybody that makes a statement like you did, that it's the parents' fault, that's pedophilic talk, period. It's someone else's fault for your problems. There's not a damn one of you I would trust within a mile of a kid, let alone deciding what they should read. I think you people have no common shame. You're sitting there trying to put an idea that somehow this is freedom of speech. It's not freedom of speech. The devastation goes on in those kids' eyes. I took care of them at API. Their parents had abused the hell out of them. And I had these here telling me that this is an acceptable book so other kids will feel wanted. No, there's places to go for that. There's training. You can recognize a child that has been abused. It's not 100% perfect. Nothing is. Humans are involved, but they try. You people are up here trying to cover yourselves because you've let this trash in the library and you're scared to death they're going to haul your ass off to jail, which it should be. So thank you for your time.
there are now 7 states that you know of that have legislation in place that fine up to $103,000 and 20 years in prison for allowing obscene material to go into the hands of kids. So, Bobby, like duck.
Would you like me to address any comments?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's our turn.
I may want to hear at the end after we, the people, get a chance to talk.
That's why I asked.
When I was a young girl, I read Mandingo series, which is very titillating. It's about the blacks and the whites and slavery and how exciting it was to see each other as different people and unite. But it was up to my brain to decide what the book was about and what I thought in the titillating parts. I did not get exposed to genitalia. I did not get exposed to this is okay to do and that's okay to do. No, these books were really great. And kids do need some titillating things. Humans are sexual creatures, but not as a child. Children should be sweet and innocent. And I thank my parents that they kept me that way. And my grandchildren that I am raising are making me mad because they're not sweet and innocent. They're reading this stuff from the libraries. They're seeing it on the YouTube, not YouTube, but on the internet. But anyways, some stuff is okay, but not explicit stuff that children can, their psychic is affected. They can become traumatized as adults when they see some of this stuff. They could land up in a loony bin. They could land up not having a job. They could land up not being able to own property or having anything because their brains are so twisted from what happened that, you know, and this is where the RICO law comes in. It is explicit in that RICO law that if anybody does anything to a child, in the future, they can pay for it. If it's the government doing this, which it is, then the government can pay these kids' costs and stuff. But anyways, I think some things are okay, but not explicit things.
Okay, I would like to speak to the comment about this, how this doesn't glamorize. Ready? This is from page 336. I'm kind of liking this blood thing. Fetish, fixation, it's not quite an obsession yet, but I can see it growing into that. Drip, drip, steady, slow, drip, drip, quicker yet. Drip, 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 drip. I probably just let myself drip, but I did promise to show up at work and help out with the holiday decorations. Glamorizing to you?
Yeah. Sounds demonic to me.
Government has no business purchasing,
Don't go.
housing, and funding this stuff for people. If people want to purchase this on their own and they're adults, that's their own business. But we're paying for this stuff. This is not right that we are funding these people to do this in these libraries. This is taxpayer money, paying your salary and all these people that are sitting your salary. We have no business funding pornography in any way. Why are we supplying pornography with taxpayer dollars? That's what we're doing. That has no purpose in government at all. It shouldn't, but it sounds like it does.
All right. Urging on page 236, but I do like the cool of the porcelain on my face, the solid tile beneath my butt. Most of all, I like my belly emptied, even temporarily if food of bad. Now that I've evacuated my stomach, I can swallow the oxy I borrowed from myself. I pop the pill, chase it with whiskey, crawl into bed, and pray that it'll bring dreamless sleep.
Oh my God, really?
They're saying that is not glamorizing this?
What do you think?
Page 259, more drugs, more men, more sex. Do you think there's really such a thing as enough? Truth is, more than missing Mick, I really miss my lunchtime buzz. I wish I could just buy a personal stash and keep it around.
Wow.
This book is so, if evil had a face,
Yes.
it is this book, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, yes.
Anyone else want to speak before you?
We are faithful taxpayers. This is outrageous that we have to fund this stuff.
I absolutely am totally against it. You know, we build these beautiful multi-million-dollar buildings and we put Marxist librarians and teachers in them, in the schools and the libraries. We need to close these institutions down. Government is doing a rotten job and we need to get government out of these institutions. Privatize them. Yes. Private enterprise. Teachers can still have a job if somebody wants to hire them. Get out of government.
Yeah. I find it really ironic that we have the board members that were up there reviewing these books, using their shared experiences to justify breaking the law and putting porn onto our shelves within our libraries. The justification of this is not justified because you have a shared experience. Name me one member on that board whose shared experience, person that violated them as they claimed, are sitting in jail right now, have been convicted, have been persecuted for what they did. If they think this is not glamorizing it to our children, obviously they don't think their shared experiences are important enough to have actually done something about it in their own life. They would rather screw up every other child's life out there and the parents trying to raise them to put this type of material in front of their faces.
So how come these other folks left? They don't hear what we have to say and rhythm in, and that's all we get? They don't have the guts. That's a serious question. Why did those people who are really making us very angry, why did they're cowards, that they left? They don't want to hear it. Good for you. You're at least standing there.
Yeah, we paid them to listen.
I was asked not to speak until everybody in the crowd had spoken.
So it's gonna be a while. I don't have a lot to say, but they said when the kids read these books, that, you know, it makes them feel better. They learn something. They only learn something if they can go talk to an individual like an adult or a professional to help them understand this. When you read something or see pictures on adults, it puts ideas in your mind, and you have to realize that as an adult. For sex, when you get married and all that, it puts it in your mind when you're reading it and seeing the pictures. And the kids that look at these books, if they're not going out looking for help, they're not going to understand that at all. They see the pictures, they see the words, and to me, it's only encouraged them to do it and try it.
I wish I had found these excerpts earlier. This is when she's in counseling. 536, speaking of drugs, I could use a big fatty right about now. How will I ever score after I get out of it? And which one of me is the loadie anyway? I'm sure being high isn't good for my condition, but how can I not if I have to go home? Glamorizing, yeah, every bit of it.
When I was listening to the people speaking, the committee, and I'm thinking about the city I'm living in and the people working for the city, the library. I'm thinking, this is a cesspool that I'm living in. If these people are agreeing to this trash going to the young people in this community, I'm just thinking I live in a cesspool. A hellhole. And I was thinking about, as a person with a master's in psychology, so I've trained on this, I also recognize that reading the book is making a secondary traumatization. You're just getting traumatized by reading that trash.
I don't want to turn my back on you, but I'm gonna speak so I can speak this way.
We can turn that podium around.
You're fine.
Okay.
I think again, I'll be bargaining in at work, I'll interview this, Neil Street. Without making my conversations, I do appreciate this, and I listen to what the folks say here. Very contentious issue amongst folks that took the time to come out on such a day as this. Couple of comments I have. I'm not gonna argue and debate. I don't think that's productive for us. It's like, saying Ford versus Chevy, chicken versus pork. I'm not gonna get into that. What I want to address is a couple of things that were said today, or some clarification. Number one, the library board meetings that Ms. Grover talked about, those have always had a public comment section. They are also available via Teams. Teams is it's an internet video conferencing system that the borough utilizes. So you could attend and comment on those meetings from your home. There's a 3-minute, just like a 7 meeting, there's a 3-minute time limit to speak to the committee. Only welcome those comments. We would appreciate those. I'm not going to debate what pornography is. And I think there's a line that each of us has as to what is and isn't pornographic. And I agree that providing pornography to children would violate obscenity laws. I don't disagree. I agree with everyone in the room that the last thing I want to do is provide material to a child that would be considered pornographic or obscene.
So what do you do?
So where's your?
I appreciate that. That's where I'm going. Okay, that's where I'm trying to go. And you can disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to tell you what I understand the definition of obscenity is based on the Miller-Ginsburg test. None of these, and this is gonna infuriate the room and, load your guns, pull back your arrows, I'm ready. None of these books violate the obscenity laws in any state or federal.
Baloney.
Okay. While you can disagree with that statement, it is true, and here's why. Number one, that book has been out since 2008, I believe.
We didn't know, so.
Let me finish, please. Book's been out since 2008. How many thousands of copies do you think there are in libraries across the nation? 10,000, 100,000?
Valley.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Let me get to the obscenity issue. If those books were indeed obscene, there would be librarians and Parks and Recreation directors who work with libraries in jail all across the country.
Get right there.
Not Sue. It's coming.
Okay, let me please finish the statement. That hasn't happened anywhere ever, which means, number one, they're not obscene. They don't meet the legal definition of obscenity. Number two, and I know we're all a big proponent of all of our rights. We all believe in the First Amendment. And the First Amendment allows, I'm not saying I agree with this book's content. I'm saying the First Amendment allows the public the opportunity to view materials that you might find objectionable or I might find objectionable. Again, I'm giving you.
They're children, not the public.
Well, we would like to answer, so.
And I said this earlier in my comments. We aren't promoting anything for anyone to read. We have this book, and in the case of the Little Library, 20,000 other books available for the public to view. You, as a parent of a minor, have the ability and have the duty to review and decide what your child takes home. Not me, not the librarian, and certainly not that supervisor. I don't think it's government's role to decide what material your child or my child should view. That is up to you as a parent. It doesn't mean that I have to agree that I like this particular book. I may hate this particular book. But that doesn't give me the right to say that your child shouldn't have the ability to view this book. The other thing I want to mention too is we're in an electronic era now. We're part of the joint library catalog. Books can be ordered from any library in the state of Alaska on any subject matter and sent to the library. I'm not saying that kids will be able to get this book anyway. I'm just saying that's a reality that's out there. That books that are moved to the adult section or ultimately moved from the library will still be accessible to the public through the joint library catalog.
So read the joint library.
But then they're going looking for
Okay,
it.
Well-
there's three things I need to answer.
I don't ever want to say I disagree with your comment, but I would like to offer that we do have a very vibrant group of adults, young adults, and and children's parents who use that catalog frequently. We shuttle totes through this office every week that go to the 5 borough and two city libraries every week. So, again, the books are out there. We have a plethora of books that some of you might find objectionable. Some of you might not agree with the content. That's your right, and I support your right to object to it. I absolutely do. And we have collection development policy that is in place. And I agree, it hasn't gone the way that some people have wished it went all the time. I know we moved a book in 2 books in the Big Lake Library. I apologize. A couple of weeks ago, we were there where we had a patron request a reclassification of the book, or reconsideration of the book. And after reading the book, the librarian moved it from non-adult to adult. So this isn't a hard and fast no. This is a process that we go through. And then if we're missing the boat on something, we absolutely want to know that. If we had illegal or obscene books in any of our libraries, I would want to know that. I would want somebody to call me and say, hey, in New Jersey, this book was found to violate the obscenity laws, and we would jerk it off the shelves in a heartbeat.
We're calling you, dude. We're here.
Right, but you're saying it's obscene and it doesn't need a definition of obscene. Okay, if you're going to read the Miller Ginsburg.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm gonna address what you just said.
But the point is, none of these books meet the definition of obscenity.
Yes, they do. Wait.
If you're a assistant borough manager, George.
Yeah.
I
So, I said through the dialogue, I appreciate the perspectives from everyone. You got the ruling and you stuck around to listen to your comments. We do need the ruling now for setting up for the planning board. So I'm afraid we're gonna have to ask you to leave so they can set up for the planning board.
First off, excuse me, first off, the reason this has not been to any court is because there's only 7 states in the union that hold libraries responsible. The other 43 gave them a free for all. There's only 7 states, Alaska is one, and the other 7 you heard from Karen have made it harder, and you will be seeing it. The second thing is, when you wanted to go to a library meeting, they didn't ever post it that they were having a meeting. When I tried to find out when the meeting in January was, nobody knew. I had to call down on the 3rd of January, and she told me to look on the calendar site for the Matson Borough. It wasn't there, so I asked her to please specify. She said it was a Big Lake at 1 on the 9th. 5 days. The next day it went, so I called the borough and I said, how come I can't find this on the calendar? And she said, well, it's not on there. So she called them and called me back, and you can ask her. And she said, it's not on there because they haven't done it yet. 5 days notice for that meeting. And they canceled it, by the way, without notice. I drove to Big Lake and at 1 o'clock I was told it was canceled. So the next one is in February. It's not anywhere either on the 13th at 1. And the other one is, if they're available to people online, that means people are requesting them. It doesn't mean they're just sitting on the shelf for the average young teen to look into or find and get all of that information to make their life and push obscenity. So the reason you have never seen it charged anywhere is because there's only 7 states that it can be. And they're getting close. Gillette, Wyoming just fired their library director for this. She's doing, so trust me, it's getting there.
Yay.
Thank you for your time.
Why is there this information out there?